transactions take place not only in markets, but also within firms, associations, households, and agencies. Whereas economic theory has comprehensively illuminated the virtues and limitations of markets, it has traditionally paid less attention to other institutional arrangements. The market was seen as the optimal institution for the production and exchange of goods. One important class of institution is the legal rules and enforcement mechanism that protect property rights and enable the trade of property, that is, the rules of the market. Another class of institutions support production and exchange outside market. For example, many transactions take place inside business firms. Likewise, government frequently play a major role in funding pure public goods, such as national defense and maintenance of public spaces. Key questions are therefore, which mode of governance is best suited for what type of transaction, and to what extent can the modes of governance that we observe be explained by their relative efficiency? Institutions are set of rules that govern human interaction. The main purpose of many institutions is to facilitate production and exchange. Examples of institutions that affect human prosperity by enabling production and exchange include laws, business organizations, and political government. Economic governance research seeks to understand the nature of such institutions in light of the underlying economic problems they handle. Many natural resources, such as fish stocks, pastures, woods, lakes, and groundwater basins, are managed as common property. This is, many users have access to the resource in question. If we want to halt the degradation of our natural environment and prevent a repetition of the many collapses of natural resource stocks experienced in the past, we should learn from the success and failures of common property regimes. Based on subtractability of use, there are four types of goods. The first type, we call it as common pool resources. Higher subtractability of use and high difficulty of excluding potential beneficiaries. The second one, we call it as private goods. High subtractability of use, but low difficulty of excluding potential beneficiaries. The third one, public goods. Low subtractability of use, but high difficulty of excluding potential beneficiaries. The fourth one, low subtractability of use, and low difficulty of excluding potential beneficiaries. We call it as toll goods. The first type, common pool resources, or we call it as common ownership, involve people to work together. They manage their asset to get equal benefit.
You've probably noticed by now, in your years of being a human, that human beings need a lot of stuff to live. Food, water, shelter, YouTube, well, maybe not that last one. So where does all of this stuff come from? Why, it comes from our very own Earth. We live on a planet that has all of the stuff we need to survive. There's fresh water to drink, fruit on trees, and wood to build our houses. Convenient, right? We call this stuff resources. Because humans need so many of these resources to live, it's easier for us to form communities, like cities or neighborhoods, where these resources are plentiful, so we don't have to travel long distances to find them on our own. That's why you don't normally see big cities in the middle of deserts, where there's no water, or at the top of freezing mountains, where there's no food. Think about your own town and where it's located. If it's close to things like water and agriculture, that was probably no accident. Humans and other animals tend to thrive in places that are near the resources they need to survive. Of course, the stuff we need to live doesn't come ready to use right out of the earth.
Conventional wisdom says that common ownership is a bad idea. That which is owned by all is cared for by none. Therefore, all scarce resources should either be owned privately by individuals or be regulated by central authorities. Elinor Ostrom has challenged the conventional wisdom that common property is poorly managed and should be either regulated by central authorities or privatized. Based on numerous studies of user-managed feedstocks, pastures, woods, lakes, and groundwater basins, Ostrom concludes that the outcomes are, more often than not, better than predicted by standard theories. She observed that resource users frequently develop sophisticated mechanisms for decision-making and rule enforcement to handle conflict of interest, and she characterized the rules that promote successful outcomes. Elinor Ostrom identifies 7 keys to successful cooperation. First, rules clearly define entitlements. Second, conflict resolution mechanisms are in place. Third, duties stand in reasonable proportion to benefit. Fourth, monitoring and sanctioning is carried out either by the users themselves or by someone who is accountable to the users. Fifth, sanctions are graduated, mild for a first violation and stricter as violations are repeated. Sixth, decision processes are democratic. 7. The rights of users to self-organize are clearly recognized by outside authorities. Elinor's theory could be happen if markets with many buyers and sellers work well because it is easy to find another trading partners. The economic runs well. Active participation is the key. In markets with similar sellers and buyers, conflicts are usually tolerable since both sellers and buyers can find other trading partners in case of disagreement. Elinor's theory has obstacle, which is the greedy of human being. They tend to exposure the common property, which is caused the tragedy of the commons. What if there are deadlock between seller and buyer? According to Williamson, markets with many buyers and sellers work well because it's easy to find other trading partners in case of disagreements. On the other hand, when there are no alternative suppliers or customers, disagreements is costly. In this case, it is better to move the transaction inside the firm. In a market, on the other hand, negotiations have to continue until both parties agree. Haggling costs can be substantial, and there is no guarantee that the final agreement will be either immediate or efficient. Market and firms should be seen as alternative governance structures, which differ in how they resolve conflicts of interest. The drawback of markets is that negotiation invite haggling and disagreements. In firms, these problems are smaller because conflict can be resolved through the use of authority. The drawback of firms is that authority can be abused. The market is likely to work well unless there are obstacles to writing or enforcing detailed contracts. For example, at the beginning of a buyer-seller relationship, there is usually competition on at least one side of the market. Once an agent on the long side of the market has undertaken relationship-specific investment in physical or human capital, what started out as a transaction in a thick market is transformed into a thin market relationship in which the parties are mutually dependent. The losses associated with exposed bargaining are positively related to the quasi-rents. Why do bargaining costs tend to be higher when it is harder to switch trading partners? First, parties have stronger incentive to haggle. Second, when it is difficult to switch trading partners, a larger surplus is lost whenever negotiations fail or only partially succeed due to intense haggling. By integrating transactions within the boundaries of a firm, losses can be reduced. Markets with many buyers and sellers work well because it is easy to find other trading partners in case of disagreement. On the other hand, When there are no alternative suppliers or customers, disagreements is costly. This cost of haggling and maladaptation can be reduced by incorporating all complementary assets within the same firm. Due to the firm's legal status, including right to manage laws, many conflicts can be avoided through the decision-making authority of the chief executive. This is in order to keep the economic cycle runs well.